This is the story of how I got my arm bit by a boxer a couple days ago, and I'm telling it to you on YouTube because it's kind of a hairy dog story. No pun intended, I don't know. And I don't want to have to keep repeating it 30 times around my office. So if I sent you this link, it's probably because I'm getting kind of tired of even talking about it. And I'm also still kind of angry at my neighbors, so we'll get there. Alright, so Wednesday afternoon, I decided I wanted to work from home. I asked the boss, it was cool, because it was amazing and gorgeous out and I wanted to sit on my deck. My spouse isn't home. It was one of those, great 3 or 4 days when I have the house to myself. So, I got the clearance, I went home, I had a little lunch, petted the dog, went out on the balcony, the usual. And I'm getting ready to sit down and start working, and my dog's like freaking out. I'm like, what the heck? There's nothing over there. The usual on that too. And so I finally see this other dog that's out on our lawn. I'm like, oh, I thought it was my neighbor up the road's boxer, whom he kind of is acquainted with, and he kind of knows who he is, and they sort of sniff each other, and I was like, well, they're getting along. I can, take them out, and they'll sniff each other, and if it's bad, back in the house real quick. Which I'll admit was probably not the world's best decision. So, I put him on a leash. I put my dog on a leash mostly because he bolts off into the woods, not because he's violent. He just disappears. And I've just given up trying to keep him in the yard and listen to me, so now he's on a leash all the time, which is good. So I took him out of the house on the leash, and I walked him over to, where the box was. The box came over to us. La 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 la. Good dogs. Good dogs all. And they start sniffing each other, and the next thing I know, the boxers jumped on my little dog, and I'm like, oh, holy shit. And so I'm trying to get her, it turned out to be a her. I thought the dog was my neighbor's dog, which was a him, but so I pulled her off of me, and she whipped back and bit me in the arm during this incredibly fun process. And I picked up my dog and ran back in the house. And good news, Bear was fine. Bad news, me not so much. So now I'm freaked out. The dog's on my lawn. I need someone to get the dog off my lawn because I really don't want to run the dog over. I'm still very nice about dogs. And, but I'm also scared to go outside. I have nowhere to quarantine this dog. I'm alone. I'm not going to quarantine it myself because now I'm scared of it. And I don't know what it's going to do. And it, didn't have a collar on, so it was a stray at this point. I was like, uh-oh. So, I contacted my husband because I'm like, hey, the neighbor kid up the street, whose dog I thought this was, he does work for you, so maybe you have his phone number. And my spouse was like, no, actually, I just contacted him on the Facebook. So he makes me boot up the computer and go on Facebook. Well, I got a couple puncture wounds in my arm, and I'm sitting here like, okay, honey, trying to mouse and keep pressure on a wound. And, type, a really nice all caps message like, your dog just bit me, get it off my lawn now. And, yeah, wait a while, still haven't gotten any results, and by a while it seems like an eternity, but it's probably a minute. And I'm like, we're brainstorming, who else do we call? Because my other neighbor's not home, the one that's usually here. And we go, oh, well, if he's working for so-and-so up the road on the farm, we can call him. So I tried to call him. I have 2 numbers for him. And after I get on the mobile, the emergency number, he owns the funeral home, so I end up calling the funeral home. And the funeral home guy is like, well, he's out of the office right now, but I'll try and get a hold of his girlfriend, who also stays there. And I'm like, okay, well, if you can get a hold of her or somebody who can come take this dog off my lawn soon so I can go to the hospital, I'd really appreciate that. And he calls me back, and he's like, well, I can't get the girlfriend to come on the phone, but I managed to get a hold of Mike, and he's going to get in touch with your neighbor, and we'll try and send him back to get the dog. And I'm like, okay, great. And the funeral home guy is like, well, is it blocking your car, And I'm like, no, my car's in the garage. I really just don't want to run the dog over, and, yeah, gonna scare the dog. So we get off the phone, because he's like, well, if it sounds like it's not in your yard, maybe you're fine. Yeah, the dog reappears, like 30 seconds after I get off the phone, like anything. So I'm like, great. Now I'm really kind of scared, I'm not gonna lie. I have anxiety, and this was one of those times where I was like, crap. Well, at least it's legitimate. There's a dog in my lawn that I don't know what it's going to do. And in retrospect, I should have just called the cops, because this gets even weirder. So my neighbor kid finally gets the message through the texting and is like, my mom saw the dogs were inside, but he remembered that there was this other boxer that had been roaming around the area that morning, because the farm was over by where we have a public campground. So I was like, great, okay. Well, he came down, and the dog was nice with him, because he didn't have another dog on the leash. And he managed to wrap a rope around its neck and tie it to this golf cart he was sitting in. And I'm like, all right, well, let me take some pictures of this dog, because I tend to have bad luck with this sort of shit. I wanted to make sure I knew what her coloring was, and da-da-da-da. So I take like 4 pictures with the dog, and then I'm like, can you take it up to the farm and keep it at the farm? And if anybody comes that owns the dog, don't release it and maybe get their information. And unfortunately, I'm trusting, that from a 17-year-old that I barely know. So I knew that might not work out well. But, I had time to call, I don't know, back and forth like 10 million times, also with the husband, while I'm trying to, bandage this up real quick so I can get it to the hospital, which is 15 minutes away. So I'm like, well, you gotta take the choices that you got, because there's only so much you can do in this situation. You gotta take your butt to the hospital. Sorry, you're bleeding a lot. So let the kid take the dog, get in the car, go to the hospital, go to the ER, have a great fun time at the ER. They x-ray it. Nope, no foreign bodies in your body. Good deal. They end up giving me a tetanus shot, because I can't remember when I had my last tetanus shot. So they were like, yeah, let's just throw that in. I'm like, yeah, sounds like a plan. And we sat there, and they explained to me the wound care and the cleaning and the infection, all that fun stuff. And they gave me antibiotics, and I went home. And I'm like, okay, I had to go get drugs on my way home, and I'm kind of panicked, because I'm like, well, with my luck, the owner showed up, and the kid released it to the owners, and now won't tell me who the owners are. So I'm whizzing back to my house. I go back up to the farm, up the road, and the dog's still there. Yay! And so she's tied up, and I end up parking behind their golf cart now. The neighbor kid is out whipping weeds, and there's this other guy there, and I don't know this guy. I probably saw him at one of my neighbor's parties, but I don't know him. So I start talking to him, and then he's like, oh, I'm sorry the dog bit you, but it's a sweet dog, and she's probably just scared, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, I think I should take the dog back to my house, and I'll tie her out somewhere, and I'm on the main road, and this is back on the farm, so maybe whoever's missing her will see her, and they're like, oh, no, we put up a Facebook post, oh, we'll find the owner, it's not that big a deal. And I'm like, well, it's kind of a big deal, because we have a bite report filed, and the hospital told me that once we find the owner, I need to call dispatch and have animal control come out and talk to them. And so he's like, some more. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll leave the dog with you, because I'm, overweight, and I'm not going to try to fight a grown man. Can I at least get your phone number and your name, and then you can have my phone number and my name and your phone, and then you can call me whenever something happens. Okay. So I drive back to my house, and I'm like, this thing is smelling fishy. So I think I'm going to follow up on this myself, and I'll call, dispatch, and I'll at least let them know where I know where the dog is, even though we don't know where the owner is. Now, it's about 4:30. And I go through and call all of Animal Control's phone numbers, including all the extensions. Nope. I finally end up having to call direct into dispatch, because I didn't want to really bother them. And they finally got the Animal Control guy on the line with me, and he's like, well, did this happen today? And I'm like, yeah, it happened today, a few hours ago. And I went to ER, and I came back. And it turned out that apparently the bite report was filed in the wrong county, despite me repeatedly saying what county I was from. So thank you, paper pushers of America. So he's like, okay, I didn't know, and I'm, explaining the situation. He's like, well, let me go call your neighbor up the road that owns a funeral home and the farm and see if he can keep this dog overnight, because we have to do this 10-day quarantine thing. And he calls around, he calls me back, and he's like, this thing is just seeming real fishy, and I can't get a hold of this, and I can't get a hold of that. So I'm just going to come out and take the dog. And I'm like, yes, please. And so he comes out. And I'm in the country, so our sheriffs are, real nice laid-back dudes, which is fine. I prefer them to be nice and laid-back. But he comes out, and so it's like, well, the dog's over here. So we drive over there, and the dog's not there anymore. Neither is the golf cart. So we get to have a fun adventure driving around in the campground, looking for these people. And we bump across this other group of people, and they basically tell us, after, some jocularity, that the campsite next to them is where the dog was from, and the dog got loose that morning, and they've been watching out for it, or, at least noticing it. And so it was like, okay, so the owner's over there, and the cop's like, well, at least we got an owner. And I'm like, yeah, at least we got an owner. Drive around a little bit more, and we drive over to my neighbor's house, because I'm like, well, maybe it's at my neighbor's house, who knows, maybe it's just up the road. And we drive over there, and I show, pictures of the dog that bit me to the police officer, so we make sure we have the right boxer, because I'm 99% certain it's not my neighbor's. And he looks at it, and he's like, no, that one's got more white in its chest and dead. And I'm like, all right, well, you look at dogs all day, I'm going to trust you. So we get back in the cop car again, we drive back up, and, you know, we're trying to figure out who the adult, whose name I have and number, who is obviously not picking up, has an address. So, you know, the cop's doing his thing, going back and forth to their dispatch, and he's like, I'm not finding anything, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Who knows, he's probably staying with somebody else. Okay. So we drive back and around, and we get back the second time, and the owners come back to their yard, and the cop goes out and talks to the owners, and da-da-da-da-da. And apparently she had tied the dog up, went to another small town nearby us to pack up her apartment all day, and then came back, and the dog had been dropped its collar and got loose. And I'm like, okay, well, at least the dog has an owner, you know, because the animal control officer's like, we don't put them down unless they don't have an owner, and then they wait X amount of days because we can't adopt them. So I'm like, okay, yeah. So we have an owner, yay, the dog will be back. And she can do the quarantine herself, and everything's cool, and he explains all the protocols, and, you know, he asks if it's had its rabies test, and she's like, well, I just rescued it from a relative who'd been abusing it, so I don't know. I'm like, great. But while he's getting all of that, the people on my side are, like, talking to me, like, well, how bad is it? And I'm like, well, for dog bites, it's not bad, you know, I've seen some dog bites. I got 2 puncture wounds, and I got, you know, some heavy rashes, and you can tell from the size of the wound that it's your boxer and not my tiny dog. And so we're chit-chatting back and forth, la 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 la. And, you know, I tell them that, and they're like, you know, amongst each other, well, what would you have done? Oh, I would have just slapped some super glue on it. Oh, why'd you go to the hospital? Sort of, you know, implications. Although they never said that directly, I was kind of sitting there like, seriously? Because the cop was, you know, basically saying, don't blame me. When she goes to the hospital, there's a bite report filed, and then he's got to come out and do his thing to make sure the dog's not rabid, because rabies is fatal. And I just want to know that I don't have rabies. I'm pretty sure I don't have rabies, but feel free to start a pool on that one. So, yeah, yeah. And turns out the group of people that we were talking to, some of them also work for the neighbor that owns the farm. So I'm like, oh, great, yeah, I think I have seen you at a couple parties, but I don't know you from Adam, really. And they're like, well, it's a sweet dog, and and, you know, and I'm getting this implication of, like, I'm overreacting, and I'm like, no, somebody's dog bit me. I'm going to the hospital, okay? Just don't make me feel bad about that. I grew up working class too, and I would pay a couple $1,000s to continue to have the function of my right arm. I like it a lot. So, yeah, so we get back and forth with all of that, and it's like, okay, drive around some more, trying to find where they absconded these dogs from, and don't have much luck with that. So we drive back through the campsite, and one of the women there sells hedgehogs, and I won't go into the whole hedgehog side story, but basically my officer that I was riding with wanted to check out the hedgehogs because his wife wants a hedgehog. So we hung out, got bit by mosquitoes for half an hour playing with hedgehogs, and then I was like, I'm getting in your truck now, and please give me a ride home because it's 9 o'clock at night, and I've been dealing with this since like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just, you know, I can't have a beer or anything, so I just want to go in my house and be left alone right now. So I go in his cab, and he eventually gets the hint. God bless men. But he's a nice guy overall. No, seriously, I really do like our animal control sheriff. He's cool. So I'm just sighing because my neighbors are just like, you shouldn't have gone to the hospital. The hospital brought the cops over here. And I'm just like, I don't care. Your dog bit me. Anyway, sorry, this whole thing is weird. So we drive back to, you know, my house, and we still don't have the dog. This is one of the rare times where we actually have an owner that they could charge, but we don't have the dog because the 2 people that were working on the farm for that neighbor took off with the dog. And we weren't able to find them by the time I got dropped off at like 9 on Wednesday. And I didn't hear anything yesterday. The police officer did tell me that if they didn't bring the dog back by tomorrow, meaning yesterday, they were going to go out and arrest them because they're interfering with an investigation. And my husband, who is like super pissed at the neighbor kid because we were trying to encourage him to get a real job, get some education, make some money. We were giving him odd jobs to do. We've been, you know, pseudo-parents in a way. Well, he acted directly against us, so, yeah. He's going to be back today. My husband's going to blow up to Facebook about that. And I've forgiven the dog, and I've forgiven the owner because shit happens, but I'm still pretty mad at my neighbors about that. Because I don't know if the dog even got back, because I tried calling animal control yesterday, and I couldn't get a hold of them. So, I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't seen this neighbor come home. His whole family, like, basically bugged out and left all the dogs locked in the house when we were running around on Wednesday night. And, well, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of scared of them, so Thankfully I got firearms. Because, yeah. One of them just got back out of prison. They've had meth issues. They have drinking issues. I have on good notice from another neighbor and have seen the property tags for evidence of when they stole some stuff from them. So, yeah. I was trying to trust this kid. I really was. But if I get bit by a dog and you take off with the dog and, you know, I text you and I'm like, we found the owners, that is a good thing. That means the dog is not stray and it's not going to be gassed or anything. And it's not automatic gassing if they bite people anyway. I'm learning a lot about dog bite law right now. It's great. So, yeah, I'm not happy. We're not friends anymore. And then yesterday, I got home and I had rebandaged it too tight, I think, and I was having a whole bunch of nerve issues and swelling, so I went back to ER, so I feel a little, well, no, I don't feel a little bit bad about that, because I feel bad the woman's going to get some bills from the hospital, but I like my right hand, and my right hand to me is worth a couple $1,000s, so I'm going to go to the hospital again if I think it's swelling and infected, and yeah, I've had some pretty bad infections before, so I didn't want to waste on that. Meanwhile, my one neighbor has an annual 4th of July party coming up, and I have no idea if I'm going to be calmed down enough to go out there, so we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, I guess maybe there'll be a part 2 to this, if I ever hear from anything. According to the peace officer, she's gonna pay me everything I owe for the co-pays, and she's gotta pay the insurance people, and if she doesn't, you know, step forward to pay me immediately, they can do a dog at large ticket that'll force her to. As for the 2 neighbors absconded with it, I don't know. I don't know if they're getting arrested, and I don't know if they're not getting arrested. Hopefully they were smart to bring the dog back, because my husband was nice and at least texted the kid over Facebook a couple of times, like, bring the dog back or the police are going to get you, because don't be stupid over a dog you don't even know. Or maybe it is a friend of a friend of a friend, but it sounded like it wasn't when I talked to him the first time, because they didn't know where the dog had been from, so. Yep, that's the Shaggy Dog story, all about how I got this really lovely dog bite, which I won't show you because it's kind of gory. Alright,